If you're tired of hearing the same old basic mindset and motivational fluff talk, you've come to the right show. Welcome to ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, the podcast, where we dish on everything from managing that crazy brain of yours to manifesting abundance to my straightforward, actionable steps that will make you major money online. Now, I'm not your typical multimillionaire entrepreneur. It takes a small village to keep my anxiety and depression in check. I'm inherently disorganized with an intense obsession with office supplies. Your girl here is a digital marketing content expert who's generated over $200 million in sales. I promise by tuning in twice a week, you will get a much needed refreshing dose of truth, clarity, and cash-making advice. Now let's get to it. What up, my people, my posse, my fellow crazies? I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, and this is part 2 of my exclusive interview with one of the top sex crimes detectives in the entire world. It took me almost 4 years, in fact, even more than 4 years, really, to get him to agree to do this interview. And this is someone where he and I would both take a bullet for each other. It's more about him protecting himself and his anonymity, which is why we're referring to him as Detective Steve and not giving any details about specific cases, famous cases he's worked on. He's worked on many high-profile cases that you have watched in the news, that you remember from even 10 years ago, from childhood, things that have been made into movies. He's had movies made on his, so to speak, likeness and his cases that he's refused to take money from or participate in because he felt that was disrespectful to the victims and the survivors of these disgusting people, which is one of about 1 million reasons why this man is so incredible, is the victims always come first. The victims come first even before the investigation. And he has to protect himself because a lot of these people are high profile people who have a lot of money, and a lot of them are getting out of prison early, and they wouldn't mind him being gone because he helped put them behind bars. This is not a series, whether you've listened to part 1 or not, you have to listen to part 1, or you're starting with part 2. This is not something to be listening with children or kids. Obviously, I don't tell anyone how to parent. You can determine if you feel a teen should listen to it. It probably would have been a good thing for me to hear as a teen, but that's your own parenting style. Know that there are some stories in here that are graphic, and we have not done this to make this more sensational or more interesting or a higher entertainment quality. We've done it so that you can hear the reality of what is going on with people right in your community, people who you even have respected and admire, people's movies you've watched, people's music you've listened to, people who hold high authority positions, people who teach children, people who treat children, people in our government system. I want you to hear the reality, because when we know the reality and we absorb it, that's when we can make change, and that's when we can best protect ourselves and our families. The reason I wanted to do a separate part on this interview, one is it already took me over 4 years to get him to agree to this. And I wanted to make sure that you guys could hear this incredible knowledge, because what Steve has taught me, I've known him for 2 decades. I've had the privilege to have him literally mentor and teach me on his behavioral sciences that he is an expert in. He's not a psychologist. He's not a psychiatrist, but this is someone who has investigated, interviewed, followed, and studied and examined and cross-examined the biggest criminal minds, narcissists, sociopaths, deviants, addicts, pedophiles. These are people that leave us going, why would someone do that? Why would anyone do that? Why would a father do that to his own child? Why would someone know how horrible it is and then not go get help for that? Why would someone deliberately lie to someone and manipulate someone and hurt someone over and over again? Why? And that's where I go with it too. As being raised by a narcissist, Steve knows, I ask, why would they do this? I don't understand. Like, now they have no one in their life and this is so evil, and they see how much hurt they're causing. And I know you guys who have dealt with toxic people where you've had all of those thoughts, because it's like, why would someone do this to people they love or even their own flesh and blood when they see how much pain it's causing? And I thought it was important to ask him these questions because I've had the privy to get those answers and to get that insight from someone who's this incredible, who is experienced with over 25 years of working with these people, thousands and thousands of these vampires living in our society, and also how we can detect more of these red flags to help perhaps prevent letting some of these people in our lives slipping through the cracks. You're not going to always be able to. Even though I've worked with him and he has taught me all the things, I still have people slip through, and we talk about that as well. But how to tell if people are lying, if they're full of shit, if they're trying to bait you, why these people do it, what to watch out for, what to do if you have someone like this in your life right now, and how to untangle from that and the realities of this. So part 2 is detecting narcissists and toxic people plus other human behavior secrets with guest Detective Steve, award-winning human behavior expert. He is a U.S. Marshal, retired U.S. Marshal, sex crimes expert. His work is featured in the Smithsonian. This is someone you want to listen to. You might not like all of his answers. I don't always like their answers, but they're based on real fact, real concrete life experience on working with these monstrous people. And they live among us. There is no avoiding them. So I'm excited for you to practice some of these exercises that he gives in there, and really starting to just be more aware of your surroundings and have your eyes opened in a different way, not in a way to be paranoid and to suck the joy out of life. But when we have this heightened level of awareness, you're naturally going to have less of these people fuck with you. That doesn't mean none, but you'll have less. And I know that you want that for your life and your family. And if you feel, again, this is appropriate for your child or a family member who's a little younger to listen to, then please share this. We are donating. I should say I am donating. We, meaning ProjectME with Tiffany Carter as a company, $25 for every Apple Podcast and Spotify review you leave of this 2-part series. At first, I was saying you need to take a screenshot and DM it to me. You actually don't. Just do the written review. If you don't know how to leave a review on either of those, just Google it. If you leave a review on Apple and Spotify, I will count both of those, even if you're the same person. And I'm donating $25 per written review of the podcast to Children of the Night, which is a nonprofit that is very near and dear to both Steve and myself, where Children of the Night rescues children and women from sex trafficking and helps rehabilitate them with medical care, psychiatric care, and basic life skills and self-worth skills so that they have a shot at being able to have a normal life. The pain doesn't go away, but being able to have a normal life and have joy in their life that was so unfairly, absolutely ripped away from these people. So please take that time to leave a review so we can donate. Mention that you listen to this series, part 1, part 2 of the series, and I will be sharing inside my Instagram stories and, of course, in my email list how much we end up earning and generating for Children of the Night. Is there any case of that really sticks in your mind to this day that can haunt you sometimes?
There's thousands of cases that haunt me.
I know.
I think I start getting into the 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds.
It's the infant stuff.
Right. It starts to get to the point where it's you have something bad. Now it's you don't have a victim that can talk. You've got to do something to make this work. And those are tough. Those are tough cases. And I've always been tough. But you got to work at it. You got to work hard at it. You got to put some efforts into it to somehow or another bring this case to life and make sure that you can proceed with it.
When you see these high-profile people getting busted after decades and decades and dozens and dozens and dozens of people's lives they ruined, what comes up for you? Do you get angry? Are you more cynical where you're like, this person's probably going to get off easy? What comes up for you?
Here's the problem with that is that there was signs of this occurring long before they're arrested.
And the people around them don't say shit.
Right. And there are police reports that are done. And I got to ask, what happened? I don't know. I'm not there. I can't say, but I get angry with it. I get angry with the Epstein thing.
Because we know for sure with the Epstein thing, like there are reports. So what happened with that?
Right. And what evidence may be sealed now, I don't know. I have no idea. But as far as they're concerned is that a lot of that is over and they don't want to bring it up. But it's a whole different world now. It's turning into those that have and those that have not. And those that have get a lot of things that, that most of us wouldn't get.
Yeah, and I can see how that would make a victim go, well, why bother coming forward? Because the likelihood of this person serving time or getting proper punishment is so slim because they're famous, they have millions of dollars, blah, blah, blah.
Victims destroy themselves sometimes by that. But you have to remember that once you start down this path is that it's also a healing process for you. And that you need people to be in support of you and believe you, even though the end result may not be what you want, but you need to know that people are trying to help you and to get over this very traumatic issue. And it's very hard to do.
I love that you're saying that because you're one of the pivotal people who heard me and believed me without a doubt, no question. And that goes a really long way. And I want to open up to those of you listening. If maybe I'm someone you feel comfortable sharing that with, you can DM me at ProjectME with Tiffany. You can email us. Not to say that there's anything I can do about it, but sometimes just knowing someone else who gets it and hears you and believes you, that can go a really long way.
It goes a long way. Goes a long, long way. Yeah, it's needed to have that understanding that I am not fucking crazy and I am not the person that caused this.
And it's not kind of my fault it kept going on because I didn't tell anyone or because I dressed a certain way or because I was complicit or because I enjoyed it sometimes. That was really confusing for me because our bodies have natural reactions that we're not in control of. So some things did technically kind of feel good, even though they didn't feel good. And then that can be really confusing.
Very confusing.
Why are you you still are very passionate and an incredible advocate for survivors? Where does this come from? Because it is pretty much almost unheard of, and it's not even recommended for a detective to stay in sex crimes. Isn't it anything past, 10 years, 5 years, something like that?
Now it's probably down to 5.
Yeah, and you spent a majority of your career in that sector.
It's an emotionally draining thing for any officer to get involved in, and probably even more so now.
How were you able to stay in that?
there's some really fucked up people out there and mean people that it doesn't feel right to let them get away with this. And it's not something that they should get away with. And you have, and basically, somebody that had been abused and are now living with this type of thing for the rest of their life. We have a responsibility to obviously put the bad guys in jail, but we also have a responsibility to provide an understanding of what's going on to the victim and to show them that they're doing the right thing and that the end result may not be what you expect, but boy, we're here to believe you and we're here to tell you that this is the right way to do things.
What is the consequence of your service? You are a true definition of a public servant, but this came as a major sacrifice for you to serve at this level. How do you, I know, because obviously we're very close, but I know what people are thinking, listening. How does he even sleep at night or function?
A lot of that doesn't happen, but you have to also remember that we're sleeping.
That's the quick way. Steve's like, I don't fucking sleep.
It just doesn't happen. But here's the reality of it is that you have to look at this in this whole broader term of society. I was married through some of those times. How do you come home? And when someone says, how was your day? Oh, man, I had to deal with a 2-year-old that had taken it up the ass and everything. Do you do that?
No.
You come home and keep your mouth shut. And you have to deal with it that way. Or you go back and you think of the victims, a lot of the victims, and what they went through, and only pray and hope that you did the right things to help them move on in their lives. Yeah, I had a lot of victims write me letters and telephone calls that were what we want to hear, but I always still worry where they are in life now. Suspects that I put away, I'm more afraid now of what's going on in the world.
Where people are getting let out.
They're getting let out. I have a lot of them who are getting let out that are looking to take my head off.
Right, which is why we're only using his first name. Exactly.
These people are coming out, and most of them are older.
Yeah, but so what?
Yeah, but we don't know. We don't know. But basically, you give up a lot of things. You give up a lot of personal life to do that. And you don't recognize it when you're doing it. You don't recognize that you're giving up emotions that you might have for other people because you're so wrapped up in things that are not discussed and people don't want to hear it.
This is not exact. This probably isn't an easy episode for most of you listening. Still, this is not probably easy, but the stuff we need to hear and we need to fucking discuss and we need to put out there. This is part of the problem is people don't want to believe this is going on, or they know it is, but they don't want to hear about it. They certainly don't want to hear the details because it's icky, it's horrifying, it's gross. Maybe it brings up shit that's abuse that's happened to them in childhood that they're trying to keep in a compartment.
I don't want to interrupt, but I'll tell a story about that. Okay. That happened. So this other agency I was working with, I was part of California Police Officers Standard and Training, which is basically training officers. So we would do videos and do stuff and talk about this. And they were full out major videos or movies. So I'm in San Diego. These are not short things. These are 6 weeks gone, working and putting it together, things that we need to bring into officers' minds. So we're filming in this apartment, and we're filming an actress who is giving a statement to a real police officer. And within 2 minutes of her statement, I yelled cut as my partner yelled cut. And we both said, clear the room. We both said it. And I grabbed this actress and said, can I talk to you for a second? And she looked at me and she started crying. It was all real.
Even though she was hired to play a part.
Right. But it was all real in her life. And she'd never discussed it. And all of a sudden, here she is discussing it. And if you think about that for a moment, something that happened 5 years ago or so to her had reached the point where her victimization was so pronounced that we could see it. We could see it because we had been around so many people like this, and nobody on the crew knew what was going on. And the person that was in charge of the whole situation looked at me, and I said, put a hand up and said, "No, I'll tell you in a minute." And I said, "I want everybody out." And everybody left, and we interviewed her. We had the full statement, turned around. We had San Diego PD standing there. They come here to the officer. I says, "I need you to interview this girl lightly and then get her to a detective." And he went in there and interviewed her light with me standing there and says, "Come on, young lady, I'll take care of you," and took her into the station.
Wow.
So everybody suffers.
When you say when you've been around it enough and you can feel it and it's an energy, you can hear it. Do you believe that these sick sociopaths, these predators, that they can identify someone who's already been victimized and they are seen then as an easier target to them?
Oh, I think they do. I don't know where they actually pick it up, but yeah, they see it. And you have to remember, some victims, their sexualization in life is what they've been victimized by. That's the only thing they know how to do. As they start to present themselves to other people, they present themselves in that way.
And that's something, and just from doing my volunteer work, my work on myself, my 2 decades of being mentored by you, when I'm going to speak at events and things like that, and I'm sharing some of my story, I can tell immediately the person doesn't even need to be directly in front of me. Who are the fellow survivors in the room?
How many of these people have approached you afterwards?
Oh, I can't countless.
Right.
Even if it wasn't right then, it was like they would reach out somehow later, but countless people.
Yeah.
Which is why I've done the work, and when I do share my story, because sometimes that's what's going to prompt someone to talk about it. But I'm a survivor, so I can spot a fellow survivor. How are police officers, how do you guys spot it if you ain't got it? You know what I'm saying?
Well, here's the problem. That comes in time. It doesn't come overnight. It comes in time doing the job and really getting the proper training and understanding of what's going on. And when you start investing yourselves with this whole process, you start understanding some things that commonalities, not necessarily commonalities, but you start seeing actions, reflections, everything that's going on into somebody. And that's a learned thing. That's learning to look at people and watch people. And you may not be right, but you know that there's something wrong.
You have a hunch.
Yeah, something's wrong. And it's when you've reached that point in your career, it helps a lot. It helps a lot because I do honestly think that victims want you to be that person that isn't going to say, "Oh, well, thank you for your time. Goodbye."
Or, the pity. "I'm so sorry. That's horrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you." I fucking hate that.
Well, here's the problem. If you think about it and you really try to evaluate it, but counselors are the worst because they're not the worst. There's some very good counselors out there.
True.
But there's a lot of them that come from that own background. And when they come from that background, they bring their own personal problems into it and their own victimization into the counseling session. And that's not where it belongs because you're helping yourself. You're not helping the victim.
I've gone to, and I know, and she's passed, but you remember Janice. And Janice is one of the good ones. But you know how many, and I know you have too, how many therapists I went to before I found one. And I had countless therapists when I went in. I even had a speech down. Like, hey, this is the deal.
We both have the same speech.
Right. Here's the deal. And they would, how you can tell when someone checks out of a conversation, like their eyes glaze over, they're completely dissociated. They've left the room. They would just totally not be present. They left the body, and I was triggering them, right? With my own true life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's really hard to deal with. I'll tell just a little joke. This is funny, but yes, I was referred to a counselor, and he was up in Hollywood, about a block off Sunset, and went in, sat down, talked, and something was wrong. And he looks at me and says, "Man, I want to write your story for a movie. I think we should talk about writing a movie."
That's so LA.
Yeah. I didn't see him again, obviously, but it was just quite.
You're like, well, maybe for a few million.
Yeah, maybe, but no. I mean, if that's how you're looking at this, is somebody
right.
Moving on. No. So,
are there any TV series, whether they are new or they've ended their run years ago, that you feel give some form of an accurate accounting of detective work that are well done? Or are they all shit?
I don't say they're all shit, but they're all written for a reason. They got 40 minutes to write an hour show. And that 40 minutes, they're gonna do all these things in 40 minutes. And this is not 40 minutes worth of work. And it irritates me sometimes because people watch these shows and expect some kind of an outcome similar to what they're seeing in the show. And it's not the way it really works. And the show's done for entertainment. It's not done for the reason of trying to actually solve a crime. When you watch some of these true crime mysteries that are done on TV and their documentaries, you have maybe six episodes. In that 6 episodes, you can see the dynamics change, and then start seeing the story come out. Some of those are good. Some of those are real good. It all breaks down to me is experience. The more experience you have in something, the more you understand how you're going to proceed or not proceed in certain ways. And they don't project that. It's there to entertain, and they want to grab people and entertain them. I had one movie done about me or what I was involved in, and I would not talk to them. And they obviously made that very clear in the movie.
Why wouldn't you partake? Did you feel that was an insult to the victims? Or?
It was an insult to the whole thing. It was an insult to the whole thing as far as I was concerned. And the questions they were asking, no, I'm not going to discuss that with you.
Almost like sensationalizing or
right.
everything.
They're sensationalizing the whole thing. And we still have a live victim that has to watch this show or is going to watch this show and expect it to show some of the things that were really happened. They're never.
Why did you finally agree after 4 years of me trying to get you on the show? What made you finally go, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do it.
Just that. Fuck it. I'm going to do it. I trust you.
Yeah, but you trusted me 4 years ago.
I know. But here's the bottom line is that it's sometimes very hard to talk about all this stuff. And your audience has a hard time in some ways trying to interpret what I say. And that comes from the biases they may have had in what they tried to do. And I'm not responsible for what they tried to do, but I want them to know that there are things to do that you can do to help get some help. And after a certain point, some people say, I don't need help, but maybe you just need a little bit of reassurance that everything's okay. And part of that is that this is what this is. Everything's okay. You need to sit and talk to somebody. You need to sit and talk. You need to get it off your chest. You need to get it off your chest. Now, let other people that have been through this tell you what some of the end results can be.
Yeah, I love that. I want to switch gears for the last few minutes and go down the topic of, I want to ask you about your human behavioral expertise. I know you're not a psychologist, you're not a psychiatrist, but you really have mastered, so to speak, human behavior. There are so many of us who've encountered narcissists, toxic people, energy vampires, gotten in relationships, hired people that ended up stealing from us, all sorts of pain that's been caused. And we go back and hindsight's 2020 and we wish we knew better. Are there certain signs or things to look out for in people that maybe would be some solid red flags that aren't the obvious ones?
Well, solid red flags, it breaks down to overall. So if you're interviewing somebody or somebody's trying to get you to do something, watch how they do it. Watch how they're so aggressive, or they're grabbing on certain things that they know you want to hear, and they're reiterating and they're forcing it to such a point that you feel like, oh yeah, this guy understands or doesn't understand. That may not necessarily be true. He's just playing you just to do it. There's been times when I try to teach this to my granddaughter. I had a visitation from her, and we were at a restaurant, and she's now at an age where she looked at me and she said, all these years that you keep telling me to watch people, I finally figured it out. Really? So we're in a restaurant, and of course I'm looking at the full restaurant.
Of course you are.
And she's sitting next to me, and I said, okay, look at the table over there. Tell me who's in charge. Who's the person that's running the table conversation? Who's the person that wants to be the person that's the person everybody looks to? She goes, this person. And she was right. And I said, why are you? Look at how they're talking to everybody and how they're doing all this stuff. This is right. They're inserting themselves in everybody's life or into everything so that they control. And that's a really hard thing to think about. But when you start seeing stuff like that in public on a regular basis, it's like sitting there in a restaurant where you're supposed to be with family or friends and watching that one person trying to insert everything onto everybody else.
Would you say that is a good way to practice that muscle, is by observing it in a restaurant setting or at the airport or something like that, where it's not in your own life? Because in your own life, it can easily get clouded with emotions and all sorts of things.
Correct. I think it's a really good idea to look and watch. People don't watch. We're afraid that we're going to be confronted if we watch, or we're afraid of what we're going to see. I don't know if it's what you're going to see or not see, but look around and watch for that odd thing that hits you in the back of the head. And you don't know why it's hit you in the back of the head, but something's different, something's wrong. And then try to figure out what's triggering that back of your head emotion.
Let me give you an example. And I think I did share this with you, but I want you guys to hear this because I've had 2 decades of doing these exercises with Steve. No one gets that. That would cost you millions of dollars to get something like that. And clearly, I still allow people in and don't see their shit. So this is not foolproof.
No, I'm going to argue with you on that. You see their shit, but you want to help them. And there's a difference. Okay.
Oh, God.
And you're trying to help. And it gets to the point is, how long do I help before it becomes toxic for me? And it turns. And that's the problem that a lot of people go through when they try to see these things and they try to help.
Yeah, that's true. Because I won't say the person's name, but I'm thinking of someone recently who I needed to detach from, which, like you said, me trying to help, like, it became so toxic for me that wasn't serving me whatsoever. But I definitely said things to myself because if they get more comfortable with me, maybe then they'll feel more comfortable being vulnerable and open and enjoy life more and have more friends and feel safer.
Yeah, but when do you shut that down? Because you know that's already a toxic thing. That's the hard part.
And why start it to begin with?
But no, you start it because you got a good heart. And you think that, okay, I've lived through some of this. Maybe some of the things I talk about in my life will help But when you start getting to that point where what you say, you get the right answer, but you get the wrong actions.
Ooh, that's really good. You might get the right answer, but their actions. Can you give an example of that?
I don't want to go too far, but
it doesn't even have to be real. It can be like made up.
You're discussing certain things. Let's just break it down to easy stuff. Let's break it down to narcotics and booze. Real simple, easy, addictive stuff. And you know how they say they're aware of the problem, they're going to take care of the problem. And while you're sitting there, they have 2 drinks that are hardcore drinks.
Yeah, they're saying, I'm aware I'm drinking too much. I know it's affecting us. Right. But then like later that night, they're having a whiskey. It's like, right. It's as though that conversation never occurred.
They'll get you with that smile and say, okay, I got it. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And then what do we tell ourselves? What does the person on the receiving end seem to tell themselves to justify that?
They don't care. That's another thing you have to realize is that your friendship to them is borderline. As long as they look good from you, it's good. The minute they start to look bad in their minds from you is when they start saying, okay, it's time to bail out of this. And I'm going to bail out of this because they're assholes and they're bringing too much stuff to the table.
Is it because a lot of these people who have demons, haven't dealt with their shit, toxic people, however we want to label them, narcissists, is it because they don't want to look at their shit or they don't want to be vulnerable? So when we actually see them for who they are, they need to push us away?
They don't want to hear it. What do you know? You don't know anything. You only know little bits of stuff. You don't know anything. And you've got this belief about me that's all wrong. And I'm not going to have friends like you because you're hurting me. And that just makes it worse. So that's it. We're done. Get the fuck out of my life.
So they would rather just keep people who are at the people around them at that arm's length kind of a thing.
Well, they keep people around them that they control. It's the person at the table. Mm-hmm. And you look around the restaurant and you see the person at the table controlling, he's controlling. And the only reason he's controlling the table and the conversation is because they're letting him.
So you're saying when you guys are doing this exercise, don't just observe and take note of who is controlling the table. Take note of the people who are allowing this.
Correct. And watch their behavior. Watch how their head's down, or watch how they're looking somewhere else, or watch just their basic actions.
But I've been in situations with you. Steve's had the privilege of meeting my mother in person, you guys, which is something I can laugh about now. I'll never forget. And my mom was trying to control the table.
Yep.
And it was working on me because I was terrified. And it could look like, though, on the outside that it was working on you because you weren't like standing up and shouting at her. You weren't getting louder and talking over her.
It was a dinner. And she wanted to have her stage. Let her have her stage. But I'm not going to see her again. I'm not going to become the person that calls her up and says, oh my God, I listened to you and you have so much knowledge and stuff things that she needed to hear.
So it's kind of like watching people who seem to fawn over this person versus the people who are kind of just quiet, eating their steak, zero fucks vibe.
Yeah, you could find some zero fuck people, but sometimes those people are putting their heads down because 2 things: they already know what's going on, and they don't like it, and they don't know, or it's been done to them so much that they're done with it. But people are willing to give other people excuses or give other people the benefit instead of just saying, okay, this is toxic relationship and I need to get out of it.
Is there anything that are helpful tells to look for if you're starting to date or you're interviewing people to hire people to work for you or whatever, are there, or like even a nanny or something like that, are there any tells or cues to look out for that the person is lying or they're incongruent? It's like their actions and words don't match.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. If their actions and words don't match, you've already made it in your head that there's something wrong. I don't need something wrong. Interviewing people is always a good spot, especially if you're doing it as an employee or you're an employee, because there is a little bit of stress to that. It's how they present themselves and how they talk. Where do their eyes go? Where do they look when they're talking to you? Are they looking you straight on? Are they looking you to the side? Are they got their head back? Are they totally relaxed and have this, I'm in control? And they go and supposedly a question you ask should have a very short answer is now a 5-minute answer of things that have no relevance to what the question is now.
And what would that tell you about somebody who does that?
They're forcing it. They're forcing it for a reason. And if they're forcing it for a reason, that may be good, but that could also be bad, because if they think that they can steamroll you into hiring them because you have no other choice, because I'm the best person ever, then there's a problem.
It could be like if you're on a date with someone and you ask like, oh, do you smoke weed? Like, is that something you do? And it's a simple fucking answer, right? It's, yes or no. And then they go off on a whole thing for 5 minutes about it. It's like, wow, why did we need to go there?
Yes, that's exactly an idea. And the way they tell it, the way they sit, the way they act. God, first dates are always tough because everybody's trying to read, but it's just basically, I can't tell you how many first dates I went on, and I found myself sitting there with a victim.
Well, that's not surprising, because I think there's a natural.
It's not surprising, but then I found myself sitting there with the victim, and there's two parts that come in. Do I want to invest the time and effort to try to help, or do I not want to get involved in this because I already know what the possible end results could be?
Yeah. Wow, that's tough right there.
Yeah.
Is there a way to tell if someone is full of shit or mentally unhealthy, like in a narcissistic way?
Well, think about people that in narcissistic ways when you first approach them and you talk to them, and how you're getting the lovey-dovey attitude, or you're getting the attitude to bring you in closer into the relationship.
The love bombing. Every single one of them does it.
Right. So you have to think about the reason for that, and where's that coming from, and is this natural?
Because it can feel really good when, especially when they're very skilled at it. It can feel really good. Why are they doing that? To build the likability factor?
No, to make them who they want to be. And they don't care how they get there.
Meaning, I'm going to make sure you adore me?
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, you validate them. They don't validate anything of you.
But it can seem like they are, because they're complimenting you and all this stuff.
They're not really doing it. And as you proceed longer into the relationship, you begin to see that. It can be stupid little things. I mean, it's like you tell a story, and that story is completely forgotten, and you bring it up again, and you say, "Remember when I told you this? What the fuck are you talking about? You never talked to me about this." Mm-hmm. They're not even listening. They're not even there, or it has no meaning to them at all.
Would you say it's like
related to another story of theirs?
Would you say it's common for, I guess we could just label it as like toxic people, that they give you enough where you feel like you're learning about them on a deeper, more intimate level, but you really don't know shit?
Yes. Oh, of course. That's very common. That's very, very common.
But how can you detect if that's happening? Is it kind of like, God, this person's like Is it the feeling of, I don't really feel like I deeply know this person, or I don't know anything, like I really don't know I've not seen any ugliness from this person.
Right. But ask yourself of every meeting or every conversation where it goes. And 90% of those conversations are going to be about things that they want to say and things that, they want you to know. But when you turn it around and start saying, either start talking about those incidences or saying that this happened to me, or there's other things that could have been done here, or, you kind of put a little bit of put them in a situation where they're no longer a victim. They may have been part of it. And I don't know how to say that right. Most of those stories are, they want you to feel sympathy for them, or they want you to feel that they're special and they will teach you things to become special too. All of that sort of stuff. And that out of nowhere, you're now their partner, their best friend, and they're going to teach you so you could be just like them.
The nuances are, these people aren't necessarily easy to detect. It might be easy to detect if it's happening in someone else's life, but when you're in it.
No, it's not, because you want to be that way. They know what you want. But relationships, no matter how they are, and even in a work relationship, something about the other person that's true, or something that affects them. And that doesn't happen with some of these people. They ignore you completely, to the point where it's a one-sided relationship until you confront that. And then it becomes, what a piece of shit you are for confronting that. And you're now thrown out, where you spent the time or the effort to listen to all the things they have to say, and all the things they're trying to either teach you or tell you about their life and the problems they've had and how they may have solved them and may not have solved them, that when you bring up something, they don't really give a shit.
There's no ownership of it or acknowledgement on their part.
But they may pretend that way for a while. But you'll find out very shortly that they don't even remember the conversation. Or if it's something that's really big, they'll hold it against you. I'm the only person you can tell that sort of thing to.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's messy because we can't always see it. But I would say, and I don't know if you agree, but like your own body doesn't lie to you. Your brain, your heart will lie to you. But if you don't feel good, or you feel drained around a person, or you feel anxious, like walking on eggshells around someone,
who do you blame for that?
Yeah, it's like if you feel that way, that's a sign that there's something off with this person. But you're right. But I'm also wired to blame myself. It's like, I'll blame myself, like, oh, maybe I'm just too sensitive. Maybe I'm just like overanalyzing this. Don't you think that people that have been victimized their lives or have had problems think the same thing no matter what the circumstances are? Yeah.
They've been told from the beginning.
Yeah. It's your fault, or you had a big part to play in it. And so you were taught not to trust those instincts, those spidey senses about people, even our thoughts about people. But if you're someone who doesn't go around going, that person's toxic, that person's an alcoholic, this person's a narcissist, I don't think you go around accusing people of doing that all the time. So if you're having a feeling that someone isn't well or is toxic, the likelihood is they are.
Correct. And it's time to start backing out.
Yeah. And I like how you said that. It's time to start backing out, because a lot of you listening have already let these people are already in your life. And now now it feels like a big untangling. So I like how you said that. You got to start backing out, because in some of these cases, you can't just cut it off.
No, no. Then it becomes some kind of personal attack against you in front of other people or where other people are involved.
Do these people, most of them just live their lives where they don't have anyone who really knows who they are? Do they suffer at all, or are they just like happy as clams and fine with it?
Yeah, some of the ones that, there was a lot of them that were just perfectly fine with it because that's how they succeeded or gotten by in their lives. And this is the way it's always going to be. That's sad.
That is sad. But they don't feel that sense of like lack of closeness or loneliness of not having like deeper relationships with someone.
Right, because their life is their life, and if you don't want to deal with it, I don't want to deal with it. Now, any relationship is two lives. You both have an understanding of each other, and you go through it, and you understand there's areas that you don't touch. Doesn't make the person any worse, but you have a relationship. But when the relationship is just completely one-sided is when you have the problem.
Then you have to look at yourself of if you're not starting to remove yourself from this person, the question is, why are you staying then? If this doesn't feel good and you've already identified it, then
why am I here?
Why are you here? You have to look at yourself.
Then you question yourself. You say, there's something wrong with me. You may not say those in the words, but hey, maybe I'm just being too fucking harsh. Maybe it's just me. Something's wrong with me with thinking about this. And I should just probably just kind of give it a couple more chances and go down this path. Once you realize it, it's time to start backing out. You don't need to put the time, energy, effort, feelings, emotions, everything that goes into it. You got to say, okay,
like cutting, basically you're cutting your losses instead of bleeding. You're stopping the bleed.
Right.
You want to keep bleeding, you'll eventually bleed out. Or do you want to stop the bleed and save your life?
Yeah, there's got to be happier things to do in my life instead of have all this emotion.
It's just not worth it, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. I detach and remove these people faster. And I feel like I identify them ahead of time much quicker. But that doesn't mean some of these people don't get in between the cracks. In order to create great change and impact, it starts with us being properly informed and being willing to listen, absorb, and share and start difficult and uncomfortable conversations. Please share this 2-part incredible series with anyone and everyone. You encourage them to leave a written review on Apple, Spotify, or both. And please do the same. For every single written review of this series, I'm donating $25 to Children of the Night. You can swipe up and read more about that organization inside the show notes, but $25 goes a long way. These women and children who are rescued from these evil people and who are doing this sex trafficking, they need lifelong psychiatric and medical care due to the abuse that they've suffered. And so it goes a long way and it really adds up. For additional resources, if you are someone who's experienced sexual assault, you've been triggered by this episode, I've included the RAIN 24/7 confidential hotline. It's 1-800-656-HOPE. Swipe up, that's in the show notes. Children of the Night also has a 24/7 hotline, and that's 1-800-551-1300, and that is also in the show notes. Thank you so much for supporting this incredible organization and being willing to listen to the hard stuff and share it with other people. This is how we make a difference in this world. Love you guys.